Hello and welcome to Worst Quality Crab, a podcast of Asian American stories and recipes from best quality hearts. I'm your host, Freesia Lee. Joining me, as always, is my husband and producer, Sam.
Hello.
On this episode, I am super excited because I have been trying to make this happen for a long time. We have shop owner, community advocate, and champion of creative spaces, co-founder and owner of On Waverly, right in the heart of Chinatown in San Francisco, Cynthia Huie. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
I'm glad to have you. I think the first time I met you, I sort of low-key accosted you and was like, your shop is amazing. Come on our show.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to be here. This is something that I've been wanting to do. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, of course. I think we just have to take a moment to talk about Waverly, just for a second.
Sure.
So I guess for those who don't know, Waverly is a street in Chinatown, kind of the heart of Chinatown, truly. And Waverly was also a character in the Joy Luck Club, for which this podcast is named, and is also the name of our little crabby mascot. If you are seeing this on whatever streaming podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, that crab that you see, her name is Waverly. So this feels very full circle.
Oh my good. I didn't even realize your mascot was Waverly.
We haven't shared the name super widely, but internally, which is to say between the two of us, her name is Waverly.
Oh.
So,
You know, there recently was an author who came by and we decided to carry their books. And we had this really lovely time together. And she was, the wife was pregnant. And then they came back 10 months later or however months later, and then introduced us to their daughter, Waverly.
Oh,
Cute.
I think I saw that somewhere. I forget who they were, but I kind of remember that. And I was like, that's really adorable.
It was so sweet. Those are really some of the surprises that I obviously never intended for it to happen. But those are the amazing things that have been happening since we've opened the shop. So yeah.
Sam, if we have a fourth girl, just kidding. We're so done with kids.
I've always liked the name Waverly, except that the character in the movie is maybe not the most likable. But there was a Waverly Place in New York City too, which I have an affection for, and I don't know, always like the name.
Look, they're all imperfect characters. That's the point of everything.
Very true.
Okay, Cynthia, let's talk about food. That's why we're here.
Okay, sure.
So I love that you basically brought us a snack in a good way. And I want to talk about it because this, again, will get to things that can be made at home that Freesia did not know about.
Me too.
Oh,
really?
Okay, great.
At a certain age.
Yeah. Cynthia, tell us what we are talking about today and who was making it for you in a home, not in a restaurant situation or a factory, which blows my mind.
Yeah. So the food that most reminds me of my childhood in many ways is shrimp chips. So if anybody, knows me at all, they know that I love chips and all things salty and crunchy and fried, obviously. I remember my parents having a lot of family parties. We used to have birthday celebrations, holiday celebrations and things, oftentimes at my house, at my aunt's house. But there would just be so many cousins running around and so many children of family friends. And we grew up in a really lovely Chinese American kind of mix. And I remember my grandfather would always cook for it'd be 60 people coming over and you have a big tray of chow mein and I don't know, beef with broccoli or whatever it was that he made, right? I grew up with him having always worked in a restaurant. My great grandfather had a restaurant in Oakland, Chinatown, and then that obviously was passed down to my grandfather. And then my dad was the bus boy. And I think that's when he knew he wanted to go into engineering and not busting tables for the rest of his life. So, but my grandfather continued cooking for us as a family. So even after retiring, he cooked for us. So you can get shrimp chips and you can still get them in a box, at the grocery store. And they just look like little slices of colored, things. Because it always comes, the one that you get at home always comes in different colors. And oftentimes when you go to Chinese banquets too before, they don't do it so much anymore, but they would always do the chicken with the shrimp chips, right?
Yep.
And I remember like as a kid, you always think about like, when are the shrimp chips coming? When are the bows that come with the duck coming?
Yeah.
Like you're just looking for those carby little things. And so, yeah, my grandfather would make a big tray of that for parties and stuff. And I remember I shared this with a friend at one point too. And then I think they had actually made it for me, like at their home one time. And I thought that is so thoughtful.
Oh.
Like, who knew that like somebody would be able to find such a thing too, you know, like after mentioning it. So
Yeah.
I do equate it to kind of like somebody, it's almost like the cut fruit kind of thing, you know.
Oh,
I mean,
shrimp chips is your cut fruit? That's cute.
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, so I had never seen a shrimp chip made in a home until we lived in this home, Sam, and you
really?
made them for the kids. I think so.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe I've just blocked out everything that happened before we lived in this house, but a lot of my like recent food conversations with you are like, I think I remember this from living in this house. But yeah, you like got some at the grocery store and then you pulled them out and they were just these little like colorful discs that look like they should be some sort of craft item for my home stained glass project. And then you cooked them up in their shrimp chips and the kids were so happy.
Yep. They love them. Actually, Sydney loves helping out too. She likes like carefully trying to put the little disc in the hot oil and watching them like puff up. Like that's her favorite thing.
Cynthia, was your grandfather just like slinging out trays of shrimp chips? Because one, they like go real fast if there's a bunch of kids around. And two, they don't have a long shelf life. From fryer to mouth it's diminishing returns by the second.
You definitely have to keep watch over the oil because like, yeah, you're constantly making those. And then I remember he would always make you know, I think it's like rice noodles, right? That they throw in the fryer too as like a bed of something for something. I don't know what it is, but
yes.
I don't even remember what he would put on those things, but I would just eat the fried rice noodles.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
what is that for? That's
in the chicken salad sometimes.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, maybe it was chicken salad.
But also, what's the one? It's all like chopped up and then it goes in the lettuce cup. And the
almost like a mushu pork kind of thing, or mushu kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I love those little fried noodles all mixed in there. See, these are all the things that like to me they're very simple now that I know, but they are like to my child mind and to my maybe 5 years ago mind. Restaurants only. Cannot be done at home. Impossible. A home cook could never. And yes, while your grandfather owned a restaurant, it sounds like he was making these in a regular ass home. So I'm impressed.
I'm impressed by everybody who can like make things at home. I am not a very skilled chef. I cook for sustenance and survival. And I enjoy eating. You know, I know a lot about food. I do eat a lot, but I try not to like, I guess, lean into it too hard because it's such a slippery slope. Eating too much.
I was going to say sustaining yourself and your life forces. Actually, I was thinking about your son and his palate, how awesome that is. Mostly that like maybe some restaurateurness skipped some generations in your family.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Totally. I mean, I think I was just spoiled with having my grandfather cook for us all the time that I didn't really like learn the skills that I should have. But my family loves to eat. My husband's family loves to eat. And so, you know, I feel like I'm well balanced. It's fine. I'm going to always have a great meal around me, which I'm very fortunate for. So
let's go back to these family parties for a moment, because I just have this image of your grandfather sort of short order cooking in the back and just like hired help. But I can't imagine that was the case.
No, I mean, he was part of the family as well. So, I mean, our daily routine was basically my grandparents lived with us. It was like my parents, my grandparents, and then my sister and I. And my parents had invited my grandparents to come live with us when I was born, just for us to all be close. And also because both my parents worked. So my grandparents took care of me pretty much, you know, during the day as my parents worked. And so I grew up really with them being like my best friends. And so I spoke Toisan when I was little, and they spoke Toisan, obviously. And so that was pretty much like the language that I learned how to like function in. And even up until like high school, college, I would talk to my grandparents about all sorts of things. Like they were my friends.
Oh,
I know. So I think I got really comfortable with people of all different ages kind of being my friends. Because I shared all sorts of things with them. If I was like, having issues with a friend, or I had a crush on a boy, or I whatever it was, I would come home and I'd talk to them about it. We'd talk about TV shows and stuff. So at that time, I didn't really have a language barrier, nor did I have like a fear of judgment by my grandparents. And so I think that really helped me understand kind of like this idea of like kind of unconditional love might feel like. Because it's like, your parents are there to also like keep you in line. But I knew what I was going to share with my parents versus what I was going to share with my grandparents, or I knew that I could run to my grandparents if I was ever in trouble with my parents. So it was nice having like that village effect, right? It was like I was never trapped in a corner or, didn't have anywhere to go. I could always just go to my grandparents. So yeah, I think I was very spoiled by having that experience of having grandparents who, even though they had their own lives and their own histories, I was still a part of their life and they were a part of mine.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of like curating what you're going to tell your parents, and then your grandparents basically getting your like Finsta of life.
I think that's the way it should be. I think our roles as humans, they evolve. And I see that in my kids. Like my kids probably share more with their grandparents than they would with me.
Oh.
So
Sam, are you wondering how our kids are going to go?
A little bit. I think they're pretty close with us, though.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Oh.
But, you want that for them, though, and that's the thing that I found as a parent, too, is like, I think some people may feel very possessive about their role as a parent. Like, I want to be the one that solves all your problems, and I want to be the one that gives you all the guidance. But I think for me, I've always felt very grateful for the people who do take my children under their wings, like I'm like, please have a mentor, like go talk to someone else besides me. Because sometimes my voice, and hopefully this doesn't happen on your podcast, but my voice gets just drowned out by whatever it is. Like nobody wants to hear it, Nobody in my family hears it, at least. But it's like I may be saying something and someone else may be saying it, and they will come home and be like, guess what so-and-so told me? And I'm like, I've been telling you that,
Yes.
So
that is relatable.
Sometimes they need to hear it from someone else too, to really take it on.
Yeah.
Cynthia, can I sign up our kids to be mentored by you already? I already know this. Can you mentor me also? Just saying. We'll come back to that in a second. Because we do want to talk about community advocacy, among other things. But in getting ready for the show, you filled out our short questionnaire. And what a thing that I loved about the big family parties was the shoe pile. Because it is such a core. It's not my core memory because I actually grew up in a shoes on household. Don't at me. I know.
Samson, how did you even get over it?
There was a lot of tile and hardwood, and also, I don't know, like assimilation and all kinds of things. Anyway, a good friend of mine, we would go to her house and she would host like the big parties for all of our friends. And like her mom was basically your grandfather and would do all the cooking and things like that. But it was like the shoe pile was kind of the thing. And it warms my little heart when I see other people's big shoe piles, or I see like a meme of shoe piles on Instagram or whatever, because it is such a quintessential like Asian gathering staple and a moment.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's something that I didn't realize was like a thing, until like even when I went to friends' homes and it wasn't like a shoeless household, like it feels a little weird to just walk around someone's house with your shoes on, for one. But I did get used to it after a while because I I didn't want to be weird and like leave my shoes when everyone else is like, so there's a whole thing that's like,
yeah, like what are you doing?
Yeah. But it's so funny because my kids have grown up in this like Asian normalized culture, right? Like they feel very comfortable with themselves as Asian Americans and Chinese Americans. And so when they see people on TV jump on their bed with their outside clothes on and their shoes on, and they're like laying in bed with their like shoes on, they're just like mortified. Like, how does someone function like that?
Yeah.
So I think it's funny that people have such divisive kind of feelings about taking shoes off. Like all those, like, what is it, like New York Times articles about I would never take my shoes off at someone's home. I mean, my children feel equally disgusted by people who
keep their shoes
go
on
into their sheets.
Yes. We are your kids in that when we watch shows, we're also just like, shoes on. Ew. What are you doing? Sometimes it's the only thing I can see in a scene, and then everything else is ruined for me. I'm like, I can't get over the fact that there are shoes on a bed. Just as a caveat for myself, I grew up in a shoes on household, but shoes on a bed is still disgusting, and I would never. They also didn't go above like a certain floor. So we weren't completely just wilding out there. Just want to put that out there in defense of my family. Okay, so speaking of your kids, are you sustenance cooking for them? Is anyone else cooking for them so that they're also getting fresh shrimp chips all of the time? Or like, what's that like?
Yeah, I mean, my husband is really good about like cooking dishes and cooking from recipes and a lot of learning from his mom as well. So he is the one who can like, make a proper steamed, poached, whatever, hot oil, ginger fish. He can do that.
Shout out to husbands that make steamed fish.
I know. And my son's really good about making any leftover into fried rice. He can make really good steaks and lamb chops and all sorts of proteins that they like to eat. So
I'm impressed that he can do steaks and lamb chops at 15. I know some grown-ups still can't do that.
Well, I mean, he enjoys watching like YouTube and food, and he's been eating well since he was little, right? And so in order to eat well when you're at home, you have to cook it. If I'm only making crustless frittatas every morning, you're on your own.
Is the crustless frittata your go-to?
Yes. High protein, low carbs. I'm all about efficient macronutrients.
Oh my God. You're just one step above like Soylent.
Yeah. Isn't that terrible? I feel like I need to like have this part edited. I'm gonna get canceled.
No. Here's why. Because I have eaten with you and it is always good. And also I see what you carry in the shop and it is always good. So I know that you're eating fine elsewhere.
Yeah, I just have to maintain a baseline,
Yeah, because it can't be Pork Chop House every day. Although that would be beautiful. Wonderful. I want to talk about the shop on Waverly. You used to have another store in our neighborhood, and it was lovely and very different. And now you have this adorable AAPI bookstore, gift shop, community space, kind of everything rolled into one. How did this come to be? And what was this your original sort of vision for it? Or like, how has it changed? Where do you want it to go?
Yeah, I had a clothing store with my sister in the inner Richmond called Seed Store for almost 10 years. And right before the pandemic, I guess, we decided to close it just because we wanted to do some different things. And I was like, yeah, that's cool. Let's close it. And then I'll figure out what I'm going to do next later. And at that point, I had already been appointed to the Small Business Commission, which is a body in San Francisco that advocates for small businesses. So we usually give consult to the mayor and the board of supervisors on like legislation that affects businesses. And so I was already appointed to that. And then we closed February of 2020. And I went to New Orleans, went to Mardi Gras. And enjoyed my week. And then we came back and we started realizing that we were going to have to do something about the pandemic. And at that time, obviously, we didn't know any of this. But then for 2 years, I just kind of advocated for small businesses, any way that we could. I went to the port to go pick up PPE, like all these masks and everything to like package up in my house. And we put bags of it together and dropped it off to small businesses. So like hundreds of bags, my family and I just like, we did that. We advocated for dental offices because my husband's an oral surgeon. We tried to work with the city to see when these essential services could be opened. And the same for all different sectors. So for 2 years, we did a lot of work on that front. And during that time, I think I had been working with different organizations in Chinatown. Some of the different leaders in Chinatown, many of them live in the Richmond district and were familiar with the things that I had done in the Richmond district as the Merchants Association president. And so they kind of understood how I thought about community and the tools and the mechanisms that I was kind of activating in the Richmond district. And so they asked about, what my thoughts were about Chinatown. And I was like, I don't know, let's work on it and kind of see. And in the early stages of that period of time too, there was a kind of survey going around to different organizations to find out what their needs were and if they could, have like pie in the sky funding sources, what would they do with those? And so the group received, I think we had about 70 different proposals from different groups. And they were like, well, we don't necessarily want to read them all. Do you want to read them? And then you can just give us a summary. And I was like, okay, I see where I stand in this totem pole. And it was like the bottom of the bottom of the totem pole, So I was like, okay, why not? So I remember being on vacation and I was like reading all these proposals and just kind of like really thinking about, the breadth and depth of this neighborhood and like what it meant to different organizations and how they thought about the future. And so through that work, I think it gave me a really interesting lens on Chinatown. And so for me personally, I ended up opening On Waverly as kind of response to understanding that one of the things that I think this neighborhood could benefit from is having more economic drivers. So like having more destinations for visitors to come to. And, with my background being in retail, you kind of have to couple things sometimes with like, what is the need and what is it that you personally can actually like do and leverage, right? I mean, I think we talked about this in conversations about philanthropy and volunteerism. It's kind of like finding out what the needs are and then figuring out what are you good at that you can actually like help move the lever or the needle with. And so for me, I love retail and I love having a shop and a small business. And so this was kind of my answer or like what I thought I could do. And I feel like obviously we have a lot of tourists that come into Chinatown. We're actually like oftentimes ranked like third or fourth in terms of like where people go when they come to visit San Francisco, but Chinatown's pretty much always consistently on the list for visitors.
Really?
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Oh, nice.
So, a lot of this I was lucky to glean from my relationship with like SF Travel or just kind of understanding the city dynamics, right? And then thinking about that too, I love that visitors come from all over the world and everything, but I was like getting so much feedback from my friends that were like, "Oh, I live in the Sunset, I never go to Chinatown. Oh, I live in Redwood City, I never go to Chinatown." But then during the pandemic, there was such a movement to save all our Chinatowns, right? And so I was like, what is this disconnect between our desire to save Chinatowns, but our actions of like never going there? Like those two things will not find an intersection on their own, right? And so I was kind of like, could I create a space that brings Asian Americans regionally into Chinatown, whether that, back into Chinatown means that you've been here once or that you grew up here, whatever that means for you. How do I create something that is compelling enough for people to come here, not just to have a meal, but to have an experience and then couple on, a meal and drinks and shopping all those things. So that was the curiosity that I was driven by. And that maintains, to this day that, I'm still very curious about like, well, what are the things that we can create that bring people to this neighborhood?
I will say, anecdotally, you have done it because I was, in fact, one of those people that had not been to Chinatown in a very, very long time. And since discovering your store, I have been in, I don't know, however many events I've been to at the store and also Edge on the Square. But it's working, right? Like, I think that, to your point, like, yes, we were the people that were like, yes, save Chinatown. We love it. And also, it's very far from our neighborhood and we can get sort of some of the same dining and shopping experiences closer. And so like we really would need like a reason, like a really compelling reason to go all the way to Chinatown for us. Maybe we weren't seeking it out, but it wasn't happening very often. But now that you have the store, you have the events that you have, I want to go all the time. And when we have gone, we've done exactly what you said. Like we'll go to an event, we'll go eat afterwards, we'll shop in your store, we'll pay for parking, which pays for a thing. Like it's working, at least for this household anyway. And all the people that I make go with me. But how was it received within the community?
I feel like it's been positively received. That was something that I think I was a little bit nervous about. Like if you would have asked me maybe 5 or 6 years before, what about opening a shop in Chinatown? That would have been a very different situation, I think. If I had, sought out like an open space and rented it out and built up the store, I don't know if it would be the same kind of experience. I think right now I am also kind of in a place where I'm really driven by curiosity much more than like, oh, I want to do this thing. Right. And so the store being more of a response, not just from me, but from the community, I think has made this much more enriching, I think, for everybody. I think a lot of people feel ownership of this experience. I mean, many of the events are things that, we've co-created, right? And it's not just my idea that I'm like, hey, I want to do this thing. And so I get the sense that like the community is really excited about it. And even other merchants will come by and give me, they will come by and let me know that they're proud of me.
Aww.
Which is like,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
right. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like very sweet. Like to be told that people are proud of you. Like, and I'm like thinking, we have so many stories of being Chinese American and not ever hearing those types of things,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, now reflecting on it, I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Speaking of curiosity, I have a question about your branding. On the sign, you guys have a little melon seed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got the Chinese characters. I think it's Guaji.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering what the significance of the seed was.
Yeah, like I was, thinking a lot about how we would fit into the neighborhood and into like even the graphic landscape, right? Like and the cultural landscape of Chinatown. And I know that like a lot of businesses have like their English name and then they have their Chinese name and they're not necessarily like alliterations of like, one or the other. But I personally am not like literate in Chinese. Like I wouldn't be able to like name something, let's say, I feel like that's a whole nother level of Chinese that I just don't have. And so I asked my dad, I was like, I want to name it something. I don't want it to just be like On Waverly, in Chinese or whatever. What do you think? And it was Chinese New Year and he saw a bag of, melon seeds on my counter and he goes, well, why don't you name it, Guazi? And I was like, is that even a name? Like, I don't know. You never trust your parents. Like, I don't know. I don't trust my parents sometimes because I'm like, are you going to have me do it? And then everybody's going to make fun of me. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And that's something my dad would do,
That was Sam's dad trying to name our children.
Oh, see? Yeah. You're like, what?
Yep. Really left field.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I was not clear. So I ran it by my daughter who went to Chinese American International School. So she went to CASE, so she can speak Mandarin. And I was like, well, what do you think of this name? And she's like, oh, that's a really cute name. I like it a lot. And she was surprised, or like not necessarily surprised that her grandfather came up with it, but was like, oh, that's really cool that Gong Gong came up with this name. So I was like, well, if you guys like it, sure, I'll run it by a couple other sources. And then let's do it. And then it kind of goes well with the fact that like we used to have the shop seed store, and then people would always ask me about that name. And it was funny because I named it that before I ever thought about this concept of planting seeds, and but it's so cheesy, right? Like now in retrospect, I'm like, yeah, I kind of like seeds. It's too much. It's too much.
How perfect it was. It was so meant to be and so good that you didn't even realize you're doing it as you were doing it.
You manifest. Manifestation.
I guess we should say, just for listeners, by the time you listen to this episode, you may have already heard our March Madness of Chinese cuisines episode that we recorded at On Waverly, just in case anyone is confused of like why they know each other but haven't talked about it, and why Freesia knows the store so well but is not really talking about it. That's why, among other events that I've been to. But that was really fun. And I guess for me personally too, and this is actually something I wanted to ask when we did that event, but like, I don't think that a young me could have ever pictured, one, an event like we did, and two, a store like yours that I felt like I belonged in. And I feel like that is quite an achievement for a generation, a category of people. And so I guess thank you, like, that you exist.
We are proud of you too.
We're proud of you too, yes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness. I've been thinking about that a lot, like where I don't think I could have ever thought that this store would exist. Like when I was a kid, I remember begging my grandfather, because I remember taking leftovers to lunch at school, right? Like I had my thermos, like, I don't know, and then I had leftovers in it, and I was mortified that I had to take this to school. And I remember going home and asking my dad, like, can I please just have like a bologna sandwich? Like all I want is a sandwich in a bag. So I had that very typical kind of like experience of not feeling comfortable with being Asian American. And then as life went on and got to go to a great high school and college where I made Asian American friends and like learned more about history and all these different things, I started to kind of like see myself. But I still don't think I could have ever thought that, we would have had this shop, these events. I think even now there are so many people who are still confused by this whole thing. Like, how is this happening?
That, and what sort of just occurred to me is like the number of different AAPI artists and creators that you carry in the store, that one, there's such a like wide variety and a breadth of their artistry and the things that they are creating. But two, there are so many that there are some people I'm like, oh, you don't carry this person and you don't carry, like, it's not a knock on them or you, but like that's how many creators there are now that you can like actually not carry some and still have this like very full, very robust inventory, which I think is also really lovely.
Yeah, it's amazing because I remember my dad said to me, first of all, when you tell anybody that you're going to open up a gift store in Chinatown, they're like, really? Like, that's very unique. And I was like, no, it's an Asian American centered like gift shop. And they're like, even that is like, they're like, how are you going to even find inventory, And I was like, I'm pretty sure I can, because I had produced other like Asian American artists events and things before. So I knew that there were makers and artists out there. But yeah, I mean, we can truly have a curation now versus just like, hey, everybody,
get your 5. They're all in one place.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that you would have had a lunchbox moment. I know I'm switching topics back and forth, but
yeah,
even restaurant quality broccoli beef was still not cool in a thermos, because that sounds awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it was like growing up. This is a long time ago. So I grew up in Union City, Fremont, and there are plenty of Asian people there now, and I think it was just at that, I must have like grown up at the tail end of like before the shift in population. But yeah. And then I went to high school in Hayward. My high school was mostly like, I would say, Filipino and white. And so that's where I kind of started to have an understanding of myself as an Asian American.
Nice. Were you bringing leftovers then?
I don't remember what I ate in high school, but I'm pretty sure I ate a lot of Filipino food at family parties. So.
Yes, another one known for a good family party.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of occurs to me now, like hearing this and knowing kind of what you do within the community and kind of seeing you interact with some of the people that we know in common or just, that I know in Chinatown or know of, how your relationship with your grandparents can lead to like the way that you work with a lot of the community elders and some of like the different generations of community leaders. And I just think that's like so unique and special that like even when you were curating from your parents and spilling your guts to your grandparents, it was sort of setting you up for this very specific role and moment.
Yeah, it is funny. I think about my friendships and how I have so many friends who are in their 80s and 90s now. And then I also have friends in their like 20s and teens, right? Like it's a really interesting place to be able to appreciate kind of like humans as they experience life. Because they do continue to experience life and have all sorts of stuff happen every day. So, yeah.
Cynthia, what's next to the shop?
For the shop, on the horizon is probably more events. I think we'll continue doing block parties during the night markets. That may change in iteration a little bit. We might have some food from the night market still into kind of the Waverly portion of it. Last year, there wasn't very much food there. But I love creating just hangout spaces, places for people to get together and just spend time together. So I have this space called the Clubhouse, and it is above the actual shop. And the space that I work out of, but we host some events, and we also rent it out to different community groups and friends and family and stuff to use as a place to also hang out. And I think about like why we called it the Clubhouse versus anything else, because the Clubhouse kind of feels like it's like a space for kids, or like, when you think of a clubhouse. But I think about it and I'm like, when you go to like co-working spaces or you go to these other spaces, there's this like kind of expectation of like of work for one, right? And also it feels like transactional in its experience. It's like, I'm going to come here to do this thing, and then we're going to do this thing, and then you're going to do this thing. It's like, where that's not my intention with this space. My intention for this space is that you are here and you might make a friend, you might work on a project, you might find the next thing that you were looking for and that you didn't even know you were looking for. Like it's for those little surprises and those things to happen. Like I think the last time you were here, Freesia, you met a friend who just won a Grammy, right? Like
yes, I did. That was awesome.
Yeah, he came in like a couple days after winning like a Grammy for
social justice song or something.
And I mean, I could have never engineered that situation. I mean, it would have been random for me to call you and be like, "Hey, come hang out with this person," but somehow that interaction probably opened something else up for all of us.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I want. Is I'm not so concerned about like the number of people that I reach necessarily. It's really like I truly believe that even if I have like 10 people in a room, those 10 people are going to go off, and if they have opened up in some way, they're going to go off and do amazing things. And even if I give them an idea that like sparks them onto their next thing, like that's the thing that I needed to do at that moment. So I'm much more concerned about kind of creating the space and being the conduit for change versus actually like forcing or pushing or pulling for change.
I love that. I think that's a little bit why we do this show. Like this is our version of a community space, but in a more unidirectional, whatever the one is that goes out and you listen and then you take it away, that direction. Yeah, and we do this for our tens of listeners. But if they're enjoying it, then that's all that matters. And if they get something out of it, then that is worth it. Which I think is what I love so much about your store. And I've been to a number of events, and some are like packed and there's 65 people, and others it's more intimate and it's still like just as valuable. And I also just realized that every author that we've ever had on this show is an author that you carry in your store. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So listeners, if you ever want to buy any of the books that we have the authors on, go get them at On Waverly or order online at onwaverly.com. Plug there. Cynthia, this has been super fun. Look, we could talk about community for a really long time, and probably we should do just a whole other separate episode where we do that. We hardly talked about food enough. This feels like a disservice, but I guess I will just say, listeners, go eat some shrimp chips. You can get them at a grocery store. It doesn't take a lot of fry oil. Actually, I shouldn't say this. Sam, does it take a lot of fry oil?
It doesn't take a lot of fry oil. It's pretty easy to do.
Just like in a skillet? What do they need?
Just a little skillet, little oil.
Oh, yeah. You do it in the small pan too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I should try this.
It's safe enough for a 6-year-old to do. With some adult supervision.
So yes, Cynthia, you can do it. Your son can supervise.
I think that's exactly what I'm picturing.
Yeah, you can get your son to supervise, and then maybe he can like take it over as the next generation of shrimp chip aficionado, maker, whatever.
Wouldn't that be lovely though, if our kids like actually took something from this like childhood that we're crafting for them? Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah,
that's the dream.
Truly.
For them to take something away from our parenting.
I just think about like in 25 years when they get on their own podcasts and talk about whatever all of this is that we're doing, what that's going to sound like. But I like to hope that we're setting them up for something besides therapy. And that there's some good stuff that comes out of it too. I don't know. Maybe they can collaborate, do some stuff together.
I think it's going to be fascinating when we see this next generation of kids who grew up with all these representations, right? Like, and then beyond these representations, what does that mean? And I think that's the cool part about seeing, I think, the generations. Like, when you were talking about having friendships of all different generations, I think that's the thing that we can really do is help people see that there have been people before us fighting for things that we're continuing to fight for today. And like, how do we create that like seamless appreciation versus like kind of feeling like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders, and like bringing it all together. Because I think, some of the people who appreciate On Waverly the most are the people who have been fighting for ethnic studies, have been fighting for rights in their workplace, for a voice, and when they come in and they see it, they're like, I could have never imagined this. But they know that it's kind of because of their labor and their sacrifice and their commitment. And then, they appreciate it oftentimes much more than even like young people who are like, oh, I have a boba every day. I'm on the verge of diabetes. Like, yeah, it's like they have no concept,
Yeah.
So,
I mean, well, and I think a part of, to add on to what you're saying, we haven't brought our kids to the shop yet because they will want to buy everything in a good way, but also just the idea that like they will walk around, Sam, if we ever take them in there, this is going to happen. And they're going to be like, I want this Bow plushie and I want this Don Top plushie and all of these things that like, number one, are adorable. Two, did not exist when I was a child. And I think, when I was their age, it would have been like, is it the blonde Cabbage Patch or the red-haired Cabbage Patch? And they have no concept, A, what a Cabbage Patch is, but B, that like these things didn't exist when we were kids. And so for them, they're like, they take it for granted. But I appreciate that for them, that it's just like part of their norm. And yeah, I am curious to see like where they will take that and what that means for them, both in terms of identity and confidence, but also like what does that mean for where they can then take like the next iteration of fighting for ethnic studies or whatever that looks like.
I feel like even though I had that lunchbox story, right? Like being a kid back then, I don't think I ever realized I was lacking representation. I didn't even know that that was like a thing because like I felt satiated by being like brown hair adjacent, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
like you said, when you get a doll, you're like, okay, well maybe I'll get the one with the brown hair versus like
Mm-hmm.
this one. So you kind of feel like that's enough, right?
Yeah.
That was fine. So I think the kids now must be experiencing something similar too. Like what we think is like, wow, so far. Like they are experiencing something and they will take it to the next thing that we didn't even think about. So
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I do believe that there's always going to be like exciting progress for them.
Yeah. I love it. I can't wait. Cynthia, where can people find you and find the shop and find the events? Because they should really go to those.
Yeah, so they can check us out on our website. It's just onwaverly.com. We also have a bookshop.org where you can buy like all sorts of books, and then anything you get there will credit back to our shop too. So that's a great way to support us. Coming to our events, sharing the events, like even if you can't come, telling your friends to come.
Mm-hmm.
That's super helpful. Our Instagram is usually well maintained, and that's just
It's very good.
On Waverly. And where else? You can usually find me in Chinatown. So
Truth.
usually I'm
Mm-hmm.
wandering around somewhere between a bakery, a coffee shop, just somewhere.
Living the Chinatown life.
Living the dream.
If you see Cynthia, just tell her how proud of her you are.
Yeah. It's
Oh my
true.
gosh.
We're so proud of you.
It's too much. It's too much.
It's too much, and also it's not enough. I mean, you're doing enough, right? But like in a dream scenario, there's like 3 more On Waverlys scattered throughout the city that operate as a similar event space and, you know, community building and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the next thing on the horizon for On Waverly is figuring out like how to, I guess, scale something like this without compromising the community that we've built. And that's something that I feel like I don't necessarily have the skill to do because I'm like such a hands-on kind of person.
Mm.
And so I'm still trying to figure out like what parts of it people would like to see in their communities
Hmm.
and how we can help support communities outside of this Chinatown. Because I think we've learned a lot from this experience, and I would love to share those learnings. You know, how to grow a community in a way that feels rooted in the community.
Sounds like an event series at the shop. Just saying. Thank you again for being here. This is super fun. I like talking to you always. That's no surprise. I like gushing about your store. Also, not shocking to anyone that's ever met me. I can't wait to go back again. And listeners, make the shrimp chips. And go find your local Chinese restaurant that still adds shrimp chips to their half a crispy chicken or a whole crispy chicken if you're really balling out.
Yeah.
And, you know, get those good shrimp chips and then dip them in the little bit of salt that comes with the crispy skin chicken. Thank you all for listening so much. This has been delightful for me. I hope it was delightful for you also. If you want to find us, you can find us at worstqualitycrab.com. You can find us on Instagram at worstqualitycrab, or you can email us at worstqualitycrabpod@gmail.com. And until next time, everybody go get your books at On Waverly or through their bookshop.org. And we'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.